Hey guys, Andy N, spoken label, back in the house on a Sunday evening. Yeah, it's getting a bit cold now as well, but we've got a friend of us today. As of recording, this friend of mine, I've known her for just over 2 years now, and as far as I'm aware, she's in the centre of Manchester at the moment. This is going to be changing because the time this podcast comes out, this lady will be in another country for 2 months, but we will be coming on to that shortly. Now, we've got the fantastic Quigley CB with us today. Now, how are you going quickly, first of all? I've not spoken to you for ages, apart from Speak Easy the other week.
Yeah, it's just amazing how busy everyone is all the time. And
Oh, yeah. I know, it's just seemed to go that way, doesn't it? Like, even life just flies by sometimes, doesn't it? Without even realising. Now, if people are wondering, obviously, I know Quickly in person because we first met. We just worked it out, didn't we? Was it May or June of 22, wasn't it? I first met you originally.
that's what you were saying, and that makes sense. My memory of all of time is quite hazy.
Join the club, right? But you were definitely, I know the podcast, which because you've been on before, came out about that June 22.
Okay.
And I know we met you because we'd gone down to Word Central, me and Amanda had. And that's how you met Ruth as well. You know, Ruth met Ruth, the radio DJ, because she was there with us all left. And quickly came on, she left us all spellbound. What was one of the stories she did on Word Central. And we've been friends ever since, because she's just absolutely and don't take this the wrong way quickly. We love the batshit craziness of your work, right? And that's probably why we
I'm very
always
glad you do.
it always sticks in my head with you. And I don't know if you remember this, but and when you came to read at Speakeasy the month after, and Mike Booth was guest hosting that day. And I turned around and told Mike what your story did you do at Word Central was like. Mike comes on stage and do you remember what he said?
I don't, did she?
No, he came on to the next one we're going to make a debut. It's a wonderful, quickly CB. Now, everybody pay attention to this lady. We've been told from the grapevine she's as mad as Amanda. And the crowd went, whoa,
High praise indeed.
exactly.
I hope
So,
to be so.
oh, I think you most definitely are with that. So, now, obviously, quickly, like I said, I've known you for a couple of years now, but there's people listening to it that don't know you. So, give us a bit of the background about yourself, first of all, where your creativity came from.
Well, I've been writing for what feels like a while, but I guess not that long before we first met. But I write short stories generally, um, that are they're not intended to be weird. I don't intend to write stuff strange when I sit down and start writing, but I guess they kind of express an emotion, and often the best way to express a particular emotion is through something very weird and a kind of abstract,
Yeah.
metaphorical, horrible thing happening, maybe. So they do tend to turn out different to how I intend. Um, I was reading recently at a different event, and I've read one of my news stories that's not really anywhere yet, which turned out to be about the idea of stalking someone, like getting really into stalking an ex as a kind of strange punishment. And people afterwards came up to me and were like, "Did that really happen? Is that true?" And I'm like, "No, no, that was fictional. I don't do this. This is an arrestable offense that I do not do." But
Oh.
I guess it's good that it's believable, but it was concerning that people were so keen to believe it.
Oh yeah, you do. I've got a story at the moment. I'm not talking about this yet. We'll just wrap this up. It's probably going to get ready to speak easy next month, where we were on a bus coming back from All FM radio a couple of weeks ago, and this drunk old lady got on the bus and she was way off on one, and she was in her 80s and started trying to chat me up blatantly in front of Amanda. So I've done like a story touching on that, and when I read it, I'm gonna have people thinking to myself, I'm an absolute nutter. You do.
Yeah,
You do sometimes, don't you? Like it's I mean, a story like that is because it was surreal, but it's borderline. You can get away with it. You do.
yeah,
People look at you strangely sometimes, don't they? So
yeah. Well, I think often the whole thing with writing is you get to explore something that you would never do in real life, and then just as long as people know that that's something you'd never do in real life.
Oh, yeah, you do. It's I like of your stories, and certainly in this book, I notice there is a regularly recurring theme in this, and two of them are usually body parts and religion.
Yeah, the religion, I'm not like, I mean, I went to Catholic school. I can blame that for it. I'm not 100% sure why the religion keeps coming in. I used to enjoy going to church as a kid. I always thought that was really fun. Um, but yeah, well, it's a body horror collection, is the book. So I specifically chose all the ones that had the most body parts in. And yeah, I was talking to Hannah about this on Hannah's bookshelf and the
Hi,
whole
Hannah.
kind of hello and how Catholicism and body parts, they are kind of interlinked. It's hard to get away from the body horror in Catholicism. Maybe it just made an impression on me when I was a kid and they were talking about eating people. I was like, wow, that sounds kind of mad. What's that about?
Oh, yeah. Now, obviously, if people wonder about your book table, which we will be covering in some depth, is God leaks out of your armpit. I'm going to ask you, there's quite all kinds of questions I want to ask you about this book, but we will do that in a few moments. Now, obviously, before we get onto that, I know you had sent, and I remember you mentioned this to me in the last podcast about your play Exiles as well. Now, you've had this been nominated, didn't you, for a new writing award at Salford Arts Theatre?
Yeah, it's been shortlisted for the Sheila Delaney Award, which is very exciting. I'm a big Sheila Delaney fan, so that's very cool.
Yeah,
Um, yeah,
fingers, fingers,
exciting stuff.
fingers crossed that gets staged someday, definitely with that one. So that's all we're going to say on that one, because is there anything you can tell us what the play is about?
It's kind of it's different to my usual stuff because I guess I had to sustain. It's hard to sustain very weird, intense things over long periods of time. So it became more of an exploration of like the people in it and kind of friendships, modern concepts of friendships, and how I think for a lot of people in their kind of 20s, it can be quite isolating. Just, a lot of friendships change in terms of dynamic and people get in relationships and you don't see them as much. And it often feels like you're being left behind. And I guess it's kind of exploring that through a few different people and the idea of one person may be feeling left behind for one reason, and then somebody else who they're like, oh, well, they're doing really well, and they're also feeling the exact same thing, but in a completely different direction. And yeah, how just hard it is to make it through your 20s for a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, I remember my 20s and it wasn't easy. That's the best way to put it. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a very different world to what you're going through now. That's the best way of putting it. But I know exactly what you mean and I can relate to that completely. So now, obviously, I said before, we're here today to talk about your book, really, because there is other stuff we will bring touching on afterwards. But first of all, then, where did you get the title from? God leaks out of your armpit.
This is, yeah, people ask me about this because it's not from any of the stories in there. And I don't 100% know. I'd like to say maybe divine inspiration or something, but I was just going for a walk and I was like, well, I need to come up with a title for this thing. I need something that kind of has the weird vibe of it. And Catholicism is something that comes up a lot, and body parts is something that come up a lot. Something like God leaks out of your armpit, but obviously not that. And then I came up with a few different solutions or whatever, and was asking people, so what do you think? I've got like this, and this. And they're like, well, I really remember that first one. And everyone kept saying the God leaks out of your armpit. That suits the stories a lot better. And it was kind of like, oh, but it's so much more openly strange. Like when I tell people what the book is, I'm always a bit like, yeah, it's called God leaks out of your armpit. But like, I think it is a strange book, so it's the only thing that's really suitable.
Yeah, no, I get you completely. It's like I said, I think sometimes you've got to be just embrace the weirdness, don't they, as I always say.
Yeah.
I think, and it is a very you title. I think that's the best way to put it to you. We love you, but it is unorthodox. So now, what we're going to do today, obviously, next, folks, is I want to ask quickly about all the stories here. And I said some of these stories I know really well, and there's one or two of them I think are quite new or more the newer side of things. So we'll go for each one. I want quickly to tell us a little bit about where each of these stories came from, so you can get an idea for a mindset then, if that's a good idea. Now, tell us first of all about opening up then, because which
Um,
I have definitely heard that one before. I knew some of these really well.
yeah, that's one that I've read a few times because it performs well. I kind of think it almost performs better than it reads just because it's very in the voice of a certain person. Um, it's hard to say where exactly it comes from. I've been for a walk. A lot of the time, I just go for a walk and then end up sitting somewhere and be like, well, maybe I'll write something. And then I was like, I'll write this. And then I was like, this is far too weird to ever use. I don't know what I'll do with this. And then I read it at an event and people seemed to really like it. So I got more like, oh, okay, this is actually I can actually do something with this, and I kind of tidied it up a bit and edited it. And I have an affection for it. I hear the voice very much of the person who says it in my head when I read it, and they have a what you call a thick D4 accent, which is a kind of posh area of Dublin. I don't know why, but that is absolutely what they sound like in my head.
Yeah, I think what I like with this story as well is the fact I like the idea behind it when you've actually called the story opening up, which I think is really, 'cause it opens up to the book, really. I think that's, which I think is a good way of doing it. Was that on purpose, was it? That's always going to be the first story in the book.
It wasn't always, but when I was looking over, I was like, yeah, okay, it's opening up. It's the beginning. It's all about kind of exposing all of your horrible things inside and going, what do you think of this? Which I kind of think is what writing and performing your stories just is. So I thought it kind of has to lead in.
Yeah, that's a great lead in. Second story, Our Fungus on the Face of God. You read this one out at Speakeasy before. I remembered it because of the title alone, which people
That's
would
one of
hear.
my,
Oh, sorry,
sorry,
pardon
go
me.
on.
Sorry, go on, pardon me.
That's one of my first stories I wrote since I got back into writing. Like I was into writing when I was younger and then I stopped and then when I got back in, that was one of the first things that I actually wrote that I was like, oh, this is a story that I've written as opposed to just rambling.
You rumbling, never, never. Yeah, no, it's one of my favourites straight away. And I also remember An Unforgiving Body as well, because I've heard you read that one before as well.
That one is also that's just a bit of silly fun. I like an unforgiving body. I don't know. I think that one's just kind of it's kind of based on people that I know almost, and there's kind of desperately wanting to believe in things and find things that make sense and having order to the world and all this kind of thing, and also the enjoyment of slightly ridiculing that a little bit.
The next one in the book, 40 Days and 40 Nights, is not one I know actually, John. So I think either I've not heard you read it or it's probably one you might be one of your slightly newer pieces.
Yeah, I wrote that one for a bingo themed cabaret.
Yes, I remember you doing that night and we were ill. We couldn't get down to that. So,
Uh, well, it was really, really fun. It was a great night, but we all one of the things was we're going to read out bingo numbers throughout. So this is one that I was planning on reading later in the second half of this. But you have
yeah.
to imagine that in every gap I'm saying like 4 and 7, number 47, and this kind of it was really it was purposely very jarring. So I think it's perhaps one of the kind of less light-hearted ones that I've written because of that. I thought that the contrast would be fun,
I
and
think it works.
I really liked that.
Yeah, it works really well. I'm curious about the repetition on the rhythm that comes up in this piece. Because I was going to ask you about this, where you've got bits like, it's at my ankles now. It's at my knees now.
Yeah,
It's at my thighs now. It's on my back now. And not going to give any more away. Was that bit of repetition of the story always there from near the beginning, or did it come into it a bit later on in the revising tide?
yeah, no, that was actually there the whole time. That was kind of there as a breakup and also for the bingo number. Um, but I liked the pacing of it, so I built the story around that maybe more. Um, yeah, I liked the kind of I think what I wanted to get across was this feeling of something building up,
Yeah,
but
you've got a
you
definite
perhaps not
feel.
being aware of it.
You've got a definite tension building up all the time in it because I don't want to give too much away of the story 'cause it's a great story. In fact, I said it's not one I knew
It's
yours is. But you started up when you're moving higher and higher all the time. And it gets the tension where it's just something's just going to explode and it did. So which was excellent. Now, which I liked also straight after that, another one I didn't know as well. A seed in the hand is worth two in the foot.
Oh
Now,
yeah.
now that's a great play in a very cliche saying, isn't it?
Yeah, I I think so. I like it. Yeah, that's one I haven't read as much at events either because it's quite long. And when I first wrote it, it had a different ending. So I rewrote it with the ending it has now, and I liked that more. I was kind of not quite happy with it for a long time, and then it took a while for me to work it to be better. I kind of struggled with that one because I don't know if I do like I did an English literature degree and stuff, and I really like analyzing texts. But sometimes when you write stuff, you find yourself going, "Are people going to think that this is an allegory for this thing?" And I don't know if that's just entirely because I am too used to reading into things, but like I found myself going, "Are people going to think that this is some kind of comment on pregnancy?" And I was like, I don't want to come across like I'm trying to make some sweeping decision on pregnancy. So I was a bit like not sure how to end it for a while, which is a very weird thing to say if people haven't read the story, but perhaps it'll make sense, I think, when you see it. But yeah, it took a while to work out how to navigate that into a way that I felt wasn't easily misconstrued, perhaps as a strange metaphor.
Yeah, I think I like the idea behind it because I think you've playing around with metaphors there, and that's also not a very very old saying as well. So I like that, and I think it's quite interesting because the next one you could probably get people thinking this is the most religious story in the book, and it's not really. I don't think. Which is, do you think this is how Jesus feels
Uh,
about us?
that one I just needed a title for, and I was like, maybe.
Oh, brilliant. Brilliant.
I like that one also. That was just from a prompt. Me and my friend were doing one of those prompts for every day in April, and I think we got through the first 2 days and then completely forgot about it and never did it again. But that was one of the ones from a prompt. The prompt was like two heads. Um, and for some reason that's what came out, even though it's not really suitable for that prompt. But anyway, and I just thought, silly title, ha ha ha.
Let's just go for it, yeah. Sometimes I think they always say if you do a really weird title in a competition or a story, it stands out sometimes more, I think. And I think that's a really great idea for that. Now, obviously, after that, we're on to what I think is the longest story in the book, if my
Yeah.
memory is correct. And again, this is not one I know was on. This felt quite personal in some ways, but probably knowing you, it probably wasn't. Is it Galactica? Have I got that right?
Galatia.
Glassy, no, nope.
Gal- Yeah. I mean, I guess all my stories are personal, but they're all exaggerated personal stories, you know what I mean? And Glacier, the name comes from Pygmalion. If you know the story of Pygmalion, who made himself a woman out of marble, and then one of the gods, I think this is all Greek stuff. I actually not like well versed in mythology at all, but one of the gods turned her into a real woman, and Galatea was the name of the real woman, and I really liked that as an interpretation for the story. Um, yeah, this is one of the longest ones I think I've ever written, and it's one of the only ones I've written in two separate sittings because usually I just kind of bash things out in a short space of time. And this one, I wrote it actually. I've been reading Jane Eyre, so you
Ooh.
can tell that I've been really into the 18th century language. But it was kind of a fun experiment to see if I could write like that, and I liked it. I enjoyed writing like that, and I liked the kind of the depths of emotion that you get across in that through so much restraint, because the whole point of 18th century languages is all so deeply well worded and lovely and well restrained, and I'm going to use the most beautiful words to describe everything, but it's so different to the kind of short chopping sentences of like, I don't know, emotions or talking to a friend. And I kind of liked that as a structure for how to look into a story and a character.
Yeah, I know what you mean by that. I'm always a believer of writing. It's always good if you're experimenting bits and pieces. I think as a writer and a creator, you've got to be constantly moving forward. And I think this is a great example of it straight away with the story. It is quite different to all the other stories. And I think it works really well. It still fits within the realms of the book, but it's still different, and that makes sense. It's
Yeah, thanks.
probably my favorite stories in the book, actually. Now, I like the playfulness on the last story in the book. And this almost feels like this is very a flippant title to me, this, and you can tell us why you came up with this title in a minute. Yeah, but I don't think it even really means anything.
Yeah, I think this is personally, I think it's my favorite story that I've written, and I don't know why, but I really like the way that it's written in terms of just blah 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 blah, and I did this, and then this happened, and this thing, and it didn't really mean anything, but it was kind of meant to be like a conversation you'd have with someone where they're kind of telling you something, and you're like, oh, this is kind of horrible, or oh, I think that has a much deeper significance than you're aware of, but I don't know how to say that, and you're just a bit like, oh, was the the kind of impression I guess I was going for people reading it. Um, but yeah, it's something I like it because it's something that could be really small, and you can see someone being like, yeah, this thing happened and it's really small, but it's also really shocking and terrible, and it should be. It's one of those things that you can see people just kind of glossing over about their lives.
Yeah, I got that straight away. It's a very I could argue with this, and obviously after doing the longest story in the book before that, this is like you could argue an anti-climax almost to wrap up the book. But what I know you, that's it was done that way on purpose, and I like that because it's almost like you're capturing the reader out, I think, with that story after what's happened in the previous one.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, I hadn't thought about it too much, but yeah, I do. I think it was perhaps chosen because it's just kind of like, oh, but it's also, and we'll move on and don't think about it too much. Um, and I guess it's a way of ending a book that could be quite, you know, it's just kind of, oh, well, this all happened and don't think about it too much and move on with your life. It's all fine.
Yeah, I think you do is I see with nature sometimes it works really well. The books are very clever, concise, and very you sort of book, don't you? It's what I would have expected of you as a book, definitely with that one. So like I said, people wonder the book is
Thanks.
available on written off press, but we will give social media plugs out for that at the end of it, I promise you. Now, what I want to ask quickly next is what normally this stage of the podcast, I will ask the creator, the person I'm with, what plans do they have next? And by the time this podcast goes out, where will you be quickly?
I'm going to be in Tartu in Estonia on
Yeah.
a writer's residency.
Now, you better tell us all about this, first of all. How did this happen, first of all, before we start then?
Well, I don't know, I've applied for a bunch of stuff over time, and you kind of think, well, I'll apply for it, but I'm not going to get it. And this is one of those things that I kind of just, I'll apply for it, but like, come on, be realistic. And then I actually got it, and like I was, I didn't know what to do. It was really surprising.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, it's 2 months in Estonia, and I'm getting paid to write, which is mad. That's the dream. I
Can't
can't
argue
believe
there.
it. I feel very lucky.
Yeah. Have you got what sort of brief have you got when you're going over there? Have you got to write anything specific?
No, this was part of the thing that I was very relieved about, because sometimes residencies are like, oh, well, you'll need to write something specifically about this country or something related to that we're going to publish that's about the residency. But this didn't have that, which I really liked. It just had you need to be working on something. So I've kind of started writing short stories, or I just haven't stopped writing short stories in general. Um, and since the book's come out, I kind of want to, I've been looking at like the next one and what I'm going to do with the stories I've written since. Um, And I was kind of saying, well, I'm planning on spending this residency working on my second collection, and hopefully that's going to be like a full length collection because this is a shorter one that's out now. So yeah, I was like, I'm gonna do some more weird short stories. And the kind of selling point that I went with was, because they need a theme. Like the first collection was body horror, and the next one, I'm kind of I've said, and I like the phrase perhaps more than I know exactly how it's going to map out, but kind of like an urban folklore collection. So short stories that are kind of navigating cities, but like city life in the sense of how folklore was something that brought small communities together and would be something that everyone would share, and how in urban settings that's not possible, and it becomes very much a personal creation, and how individuals kind of create their own folklore of um the bizarreness of everyday life and how they might map onto previous stories, if that makes
Brilliant.
any sense.
Yeah, I think it does. I'm gonna have to speak to you obviously when you're back from Estonia, and people notice. I used to say about a year's gap between podcasts. This might be different for Quickly here. She's gone off to Estonia for 2 months. I'm going to want to know exactly what she got up to over there. That she can repeat, right?
Yeah, well, we'll see.
Yeah.
Hopefully I'm productive.
Well, good luck. I'll keep us informed, seriously. Okay. Now, obviously, like I said that's then obviously that's covering you in November, December, isn't it? And
Yeah,
then in January, I remember it's correct, you're going to live in London after that, aren't you? So you're running away from us from Manchester altogether.
I am for now anyway. I'm just trying to get jobs. And like a lot of the jobs I'm looking at are in London, so I thought I'd give it a shot.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair play. Fair play to you. And so there is a very different, vibrant, creative scene in London anyway from Manchester. It's not as good.
Yeah.
It's not as good, but I will say
How
that.
could it be? It's never possibly going to be as good as Manchester.
No, but yeah, no, good luck with it. Definitely keeps informed. Okay, so,
Thanks.
okay, social media plugs time quickly before we wrap up part one. Where can people get hold of the book, first of all?
The book is for sale with Written Off Publishing. It's on their website. Um, yeah, it's
It
hopefully
ca-
going to be listed on Waterstone soon. It's on the Waterstones website, but it says it's out of stock, and I'm hoping that it'll be available through them soon. But until then, it's available through the publisher's website, Written Off Publishing. And there's a link for that in my Instagram bio, which I think we were probably going to mention next, which is my Instagram is Quigley CB, and that's where I tend to post anything related to writing.
yeah, that's your main social media, really, isn't it? I'm aware of anyway.
Yeah, well, I'm not a big social media user, and I'm trying to get better at using it because it is so helpful. But I hate posting anything about myself or my life, which is
Yeah,
one
it's
of the
fair
main
play.
obstacles.
Yeah, the same with me, because half the time, me, you know what I'm like. In my case, a lot of the time is you might get the occasional cute picture of me and Amanda or family stuff very occasionally, but I don't tend to post anything unless I'm plugging a podcast or a bit of non-fiction or something I've done creative-wise. Otherwise, I don't bother. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny, it's weird because like I can stand in front of a room full of people and read a story, but saying anything on social media feels like public speaking to me to a huge room full of strangers. I don't know.
Yeah,
I,
it's a funny one. It's a funny one, isn't it?
yeah.
'Cause I think you get used to the stage where you can actually deliver it in front of people. Like I've done gigs for a couple hundred people before now. Like I know you have, and it's a very different just going on social media and saying, "Here I am," and
Yeah,
I'm not fully comfortable, but it's the man that's on lives with it sometimes. So I know what you mean, but yeah.
I'm learning it. I'm trying to learn how to do it.
Well, good luck with it anyway. Keep us informed anyway. Okay. We're going to quickly take a quick break because you're going to come back with a few bits and pieces in the second half. Great to catch up, my friend. So we will see you all. Two shakes of the dice.